Welcome to another episode of Going Homesteady. Uh, we are happily here out at the cabin again. And there's another principle of self reliance that I thought is particularly important for us to talk about, especially from the perspective of being a Christian. We've talked a lot along the way about self sufficiency, about not wanting to be dependent. Well, one of the blessings of being out in the country is we are forced to be more self sufficient. And one of those places that happens is with respect to defending ourselves. If we had hardship out here and we thought that 911 was going to help us deal with it, not likely, because we're so very far away. And it's a healthier, uh, more biblical perspective to see that this is my responsibility to keep our home safe and sound. And so I wanted to talk about that because there is some confusion on the issue because we're rightly called to be peaceable people. We're called to turn the other cheek. I remember when I was in college, I had a good friend who was in the Air Force ROTC program at my college. But when it came time to fish or cut bait on whether or not he was going to go into the Air Force, he felt like he needed to get out because he was a Christian. And I asked him about it. I said, "Well, now help me understand why your Christian faith would mean that you need to do this." And he said, "Well, I don't know that I can make an argument this way or that way." He said, "But I just can't see Jesus uh, sporting an AK-47." And I thought, that's a really, really bad argument. It's not what you can imagine Jesus doing. It's what does God's law say? Well, one of the things that God's law says is found in Exodus chapter 22, where we're told that if a thief comes in our house at night and we strike him and he dies, we have no guilt. If he comes during the day, we might have guilt. And it's been a typical, common interpretation of this text to say, well, this grants us the right, because there is no blood guilt, if we don't know in the dark to defend our family and our home. Because here's the thing, when someone breaks into your house, they don't send you a message first with a complete with a what is this called, where they notarized affidavit saying, "I'm only coming for your stereo." Okay. When someone breaks into your house, you don't know what they're there for. You know they don't mean any good. And so the Bible says that if in your defending of it you harm this person and he dies, you have no guilt whatsoever. And I think that's an important principle. This is not a violation of the command against murder, because it's not murder to defend yourself and your home. And remember, to defend others. That's another struggle that I have with people who embrace a more pacifist perspective is it's one thing for me to say, well, I'm okay if I die because I don't want to defend myself from bad guys. It's another thing to say, I'm okay if my wife or my children die. God has put a responsibility on husbands and fathers to protect their families. Now, that doesn't mean that you can be prepared for anything, and that anytime something bad happens, you're guilty. But it does mean you need to be wise, you need to be prudent, you need to be thoughtful, you need to sort of foresee. Now, let's go back to homesteading, because I mentioned, yeah, we can't depend on 911 to defend us. But there's something positive in terms of self defense about being out here. And it's simply this: if there were social unrest, I mean, as we're recording, we are uh, just a few days away from the big eclipse, and there's a lot of fear right now that there's going to be some kind of unrest, that there could be hardship coming. Um, well, when you live out here, you live among people who are used to some level of self-preservation. And typically you live among people who hunt and fish. In fact, less than an hour ago, we were here enjoying our uh, dinner when we had guests. A couple of teenage boys came up and knocked on the door and asked for permission to fish in our lake. That's a normal thing. We've had people ask permission to hunt on our land. That's a normal thing. These people around here, people who live out in the country, tend to be people who enjoy that kind of thing. And bad guys know it. If you're a thief, if you're a crook, you don't want to go someplace where A, they maybe have good alarm systems, or B, they have self-defense. Might be a dog, might be a gun. Well, all of that to say that thinking through what could happen is smart to prepare, it's smart to be ready, and that, I believe, means being armed. By the way, another biblical a defense of self-defense is when Jesus himself, as they're getting ready to go into the garden where he's going to be betrayed by Judas, Jesus tells his apostles, if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and get the sword. That's significant. Now, it's true that in that encounter, Peter uses a sword and lops the ear off the guard, and Jesus heals the guard, puts the ear back on. But the principle is there of the legitimacy, again, of self-defense and being prepared. You don't need to feel guilty about this. However, let me remind you that you can't be foolish either. This is not a uh, you don't want to be someone who's looking for a fight. You don't want to be someone who thinks it's somehow glorious and romantic to harm someone. I mean, if you speak to know somebody who's been a soldier or who's been a police officer and ask them, have you ever had to fire your weapon? And they'll tell you if they've had to kill someone or wounded someone or even just fired the weapon, it is not something that you take lightly. It's not something that rests easy on you. So, one, you need to be psychologically prepared in a way that doesn't make you trigger happy, but also in a way that doesn't make you fearful of defending your family. Secondly, just like when we talked about cutting firewood, you need to have a little bit of training. You need to have a little bit of training. Now, let me give some very practical advice and say this. If you are new to this and if you are realizing, hey, yes, I do have this responsibility, let me encourage you to think about this first. There are different kinds of weapons that serve different purposes as it relates to home defense. The simplest, safest, least potentially catastrophic thing that you can use to defend your home is a shotgun. Now, shotguns can be heavy, they can be unwieldy. They certainly have a kick into your shoulder when you fire it. This is something you need to practice and get used to. You need to learn how to hold any kind of rifle that's going to have a recoil. You need to hold it hard against your shoulder, pull it back. But the blessing and the advantage of the shotgun is it's profoundly forgiving of bad aim. Okay. When you fire a bullet out of a rifle, it's going to go like this. If you fire a shotgun shell out of a shotgun, it's going to go like this. Okay. What you have in the shotgun shell is a series of metal, basically BBs, that when they come out the end of the gun will spread out and give you what's called a pattern so that you can be off and still hit what it is you're aiming at. Also, because of the nature of how this works, if you miss completely or wherever you miss firing this shotgun, it's extremely unlikely that you'll create unintentional collateral damage. So you've got a lot of these BBs going out like this, and if you miss or it goes beyond, you're not going to go through a wall and hit your family or through the wall of the house and go and hit the neighbor. A rifle, that can happen. So you have something very useful, again, for close quarters, something that's going to be a significant deterrent. By the way, although you got to remember this principle that you never aim at something you're not willing to shoot and kill. Okay, this romantic notion of, well, gosh, if someone comes in, I have a right to self-defense, but I don't want to kill somebody if they just came from my stereo, so I'm going to aim for their knee. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way at all. You need to aim at the person. But with the shotgun, even there, you're going to be a deterrent. What I was going to say is, even though you need to be ready to fire, there may be probably more home assaults have been stopped by the simple sound of racking a shell into your shotgun with a pump version. When the thief hears that, he knows he's in trouble. Also, by the way, front sight. That's what you remind yourself how you're aiming. Front sight. The thief hears that, he's gone. He knows he's in trouble. So start, though, again, with that shotgun. I would encourage a 12 gauge. I mentioned close quarters, and there's different levels of close quarters. One of the weaknesses of the shotgun, particularly in a place like this that's pretty small, is it's unwieldy. It's heavy, it's unwieldy, it's hard to get it everywhere you want it to go. And that's one of the reasons, as I said, other weapons are better for other circumstances. But again, if you're starting out, start with a shotgun. You don't have to get, they're inexpensive. They're easy to find. The ammunition's cheap. They can be used for hunting. They can be used to get rid of your varmints. If you've got a varmint problem, a shotgun is a very useful varmint gun to get the the groundhogs to go away. So there's all sorts of effective uses for that shotgun. You can even get shells that have bigger, fewer projectiles inside the shell that you can actually use for hunting deer. So let me encourage you, get that 12 gauge when you're starting out, and do go out and practice a little bit. You don't have to, you can shoot skeet if you want to, because it's often used for hunting birds like ducks or grouse or pheasant. That's what my dad used to hunt, and he used to come home. He had a beautiful 12 gauge, and he would come home with his pockets on his vest full of game birds. So it's, again, useful self-defense for hunting, and not difficult. As I said, they're inexpensive. You don't have to have a license to get one. You don't have to register a shotgun. It's very, very simple and a great place to start. Now, I am no expert on firearms. I mean, if probably most of you have at least at some time in your life been within earshot of guys who are gun guys talking about guns and how they like the Glock 29, and this one likes the Glock 39, and this one says, no, it's the Kel-Tec, and that's not me. And I'm not here to argue that, some sort of macho bluster, you need to have the coolest thing and the best thing. And no, I'm talking about practicality. I'm talking about protection. Now, other safety issues, of course, you need to know how to keep your weapon accessible to you, but not to others. And that's a much more complicated process. Typically, we keep our ammo and our gun in separate places and out of reach of little ones. All those things are important. There are gun safes of various kinds. All of that is stuff for you to consider as you are taking on this responsibility. Don't take it lightly. Don't take it simply as a hobby, but look at it as a responsibility. I have the responsibility to protect my family. And by the way, I've gone out when you hear a noise, I've gone out with a driver. A driver is a weapon that can also be used to tee off from on a golf course. It's the big, heavy golf club. And I'd much rather go out with a shotgun when I'm looking, or some other weapon like that. So take it seriously, learn about it. I'm sure YouTube has a million ways that you can learn. Go ahead and Google, best shotgun for home defense or learning how to defend with home. There's a lot more to home defense, understanding things like how to watch farther away. That's another place where different weapons come into hand, on your home itself, inside your home. Those are all good things to learn about and to study about. I want to remind you before we go. I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope you'll subscribe. I hope that you'll send any comments you have. Maybe you have a better idea about what's best. Maybe you have an experience about this. Maybe you can speak to the hardship that comes with actually shooting someone. We'd love to hear from you. We have conversations. Don't forget, this is us working together. This is not wisdom coming from on high. We're on this organic journey together. So subscribe, give us any feedback and comments, share with your friends, hit that like button. That helps us get in front of other eyes. And be sure to come back next time. Thanks so much for being with us on Going Homesteading.